The luxury real estate market isn't just correcting, it's undergoing a total, violent liquidation. Walk through any premier gated community in late 2026, and the scenery isn't defined by architectural splendor or pristine landscaping. It's defined by blue, bank-owned foreclosure notices taped to iron gates, empty moving vans idling in cobblestone driveways, and price-cut history logs on listing portals that look like financial crime scenes. Properties that were considered bulletproof wealth vaults 18 months ago are bleeding 30, 50, even 65% of their peak valuations. The high net worth crowd, long accustomed to treating prime residential real estate as an immortal asset class, is currently locked in a desperate, orderly stampede for the exit. But there's no liquidity waiting for them. The cheap money era didn't just end, it left behind a monumental collective overhang, a multi-trillion-dollar financial hangover where leverage, hubris, and zero interest rate policy blinded an entire class of buyers to basic economic mechanics. Most commentary blames standard macroeconomic headwinds, elevated interest rates, persistent inflation, and tightening credit. That analysis is shallow. The real forces driving this crash are far more sinister and structural. We are witnessing the simultaneous convergence of non-linearly spiking property insurance costs, systemic tech sector labor contractions, aggressive municipal tax shifts, and climate-driven actuary revaluations. Wealthy buyers who assumed they were buying unassailable sanctuaries are realizing they actually purchased massive, cash-draining financial anchors. The scale of this wealth destruction is staggering, and it is reshaping the geographic map of American capital right now. Across the country, 10 specific metropolitan areas are acting as the epicenter of this unwinding. In these markets, the illusion of perpetual appreciation has shattered, leaving speculative flippers, institutional funds, and high-income families holding assets that cost tens of thousands of dollars a month just to sit empty. Understanding the hyper-local mechanics behind this implosion isn't just an exercise in morbid financial curiosity. It is the single most critical playbook for anyone holding liquid capital today. It is the difference between acquiring real value at a generational bottom and catching a falling knife that will sever your family's balance sheet. And yet, amid this nationwide unwinding, there is one specific coastal municipality where the destruction of equity defies every standard framework of real estate risk. It isn't just suffering from high interest rates or bad regional politics. In this isolated haven, multi-million-dollar waterfront estates are essentially being rendered unsellable overnight because of an obscure, hyper-localized zoning and liability trap that almost nobody saw coming. Owners who believed they held tens of millions in multi-generational equity are waking up to discover that their titles are legally trapped, their structures are uninsurable, and their exit routes are entirely blocked. The exact location of this coastal disaster, along with the precise legal mechanism that obliterated its housing market, reveals just how fragile modern luxury equity truly is. Starting at number 10, Austin, Texas. The poster child of the pandemic tech migration, a market once hailed as the unbeatable tax-free utopia, has officially smashed face-first into a structural brick wall. Just 3 years ago, West Coast transplants were aggressively outbidding each other, dropping all cash contingencies and throwing absurd sums at suburban tract mansions. Today, those same buyers are desperately trying to offload those properties into a completely dormant local market. According to recent metrics from Redfin, high-end housing inventory across the Austin metropolitan area has spiked by an eye-watering 315% relative to its peak cycle lows. Sellers who eagerly paid $2.5 million during the frenzy are now quietly implementing $600,000 price cuts, only to be met with dead silence at open houses. The disconnect between peak pandemic delusions and current market realities is stark. Sellers are discovering that the easy money tide didn't just recede, it evaporated. Data from the Texas Real Estate Research Center confirms that homes priced over the $1.5 million threshold now sit on the market for an average of 210 days. Compare that to the frictionless 15-day turnarounds recorded in mid-2022. The fundamental engine driving this collapse isn't just shifting consumer sentiment, it's the brutal, unyielding reality of Texas property taxes. Without a state income tax, local municipalities rely heavily on property valuations to fund operations. As local appraisal districts reassess these ultra-luxury parcels at peak bubble valuations, annual tax bills exploded by up to 40% over a 3-year stretch. For many, those tax bills completely erased the theoretical savings of leaving California or Washington. Compounding the property tax shock is a structural shift in the local employment base. The Austin Chamber of Commerce reports a 14% contraction in high-paying regional software engineering roles over the past year. The endless pool of tech talent holding liquid stock options, the exact demographic required to absorb $10,000 a month carrying costs, has dried up. Trying to maintain a massive mortgage and property tax obligation on an over-leveraged Austin estate when your underlying tech equity has lost half its value is a quick path to insolvency. The structural lesson buried in the Austin collapse is straightforward. Never evaluate a geographic boom without calculating its long-term, non-negotiable carrying costs. Real estate values cannot permanently decouple from the local median income, and banking on perpetual appreciation in a market heavily reliant on a single volatile sector is a gamble that always ends the same way. To comprehend how the American luxury housing market arrived at this systemic collapse, one must examine the decade of policy decisions, artificial interest rate environments. However, as corporate return-to-office mandates intensified and local economic fundamentals asserted themselves, this mountain enclave transformed into a severe distress market for luxury real estate. Data from the Intermountain Multiple Listing Service shows that median transaction prices for the top 10% of residential properties in the Boise metropolitan area have fallen 32% from their historical highs. The contraction is particularly severe in the ultra-luxury tier above $2 million, where listing price cuts of up to 50% are now frequently required to clear inventory. Reports published by Zillow indicate that 68% of luxury listings in the region have undergone at least 3 successive price reductions prior to securing pending status or being withdrawn entirely. The underlying vulnerability of the Boise luxury market lies in its severe wage-to-price imbalance. Historical data from the Idaho Department of Labor shows local annual wage growth stagnating at a modest 1.2%. This creates a structural impossibility. The domestic local workforce cannot organically absorb or service these multi-million-dollar housing assets. Furthermore, national mortgage origination records indicate that 45% of high-end purchases in this market were structured using adjustable-rate mortgages. As these loans reset to prevailing rates above 8%, monthly debt service obligations doubled overnight. Trapped between stagnant local incomes, surging debt costs, and mandatory corporate relocations back to primary coastal hubs, sellers are forced into aggressive capitulation. Moving west to number 8, Seattle, Washington. In the Pacific Northwest, the high-end real estate collapse is driven by a convergence of corporate labor contractions, aggressive state-level tax policies, and declining urban public safety metrics. For over 2 decades, Seattle enjoyed a real estate supercycle underpinned by the rapid expansion of global technology conglomerates and lucrative equity-based compensation packages. That model has broken down. Recent housing transaction reports from the Northwest Multiple Listing Service reveal that property sales volume for homes priced above $2.5 million has dropped by 58% year over year. In affluent enclaves like Mercer Island and Bellevue, Redfin Analytics show the average cumulative days on market for luxury waterfront estates expanding to 185 days. Smart homes and architectural compounds sit vacant as high-bracket technology executives reevaluate their capital exposure amid widespread corporate restructuring. Policy decisions at the state and municipal levels have accelerated this capital flight. The implementation of Washington state's capital gains tax triggered an immediate exit of high-net-worth taxpayers, with Washington Department of Revenue figures reflecting a 25% reduction in top-tier individual returns filed within urban King County limits. Simultaneously, municipal crime reports analyzed by local press show property crime in historically protected residential zones surging by 33%. Furthermore, an economic study from the University of Washington highlights a 41% decline in restricted stock unit payouts across regional corporate employees, effectively destroying the liquid cash flow required for premium down payments and high-yield mortgage underwriting. Further inland at number 7, Denver, Colorado. The mile-high city presents a distinct structural trap: the complete collapse of speculative short-term rental models combined with historic surges in property insurance premiums. Over the past 5 years, institutional and individual investors heavily acquired luxury inventory surrounding the Denver metro area and foothill corridors, leveraging short-term rental platforms to offset aggressive leverage. That financial model has unraveled. Data from short-term rental analytics firm AirDNA indicates that average daily rates for luxury vacation properties across metropolitan Denver have fallen 42% over a 24-month period due to severe supply saturation. As rental yields collapsed, over-leveraged owners attempted to offload assets simultaneously. The Colorado Association of Realtors reports that active listing inventory for properties priced above $1.8 million has surged by 215% year-over-year, with nearly 40% of these investor-owned assets operating in negative equity territory. The crisis in Denver is further compounded by a severe insurance shock. The Colorado Division of Insurance reports an average premium increase of 55% for homes situated within wildland-urban interface zones due to escalating wildfire risks. Combined with mortgage data showing 52% of these luxury acquisitions were financed via interest-only debt instruments now entering their principal amortization phases, carrying costs have reached unsustainable levels. Moving into the second half of this breakdown, the structural forces destabilizing American luxury real estate are transitioning from macroeconomic pressure to direct institutional and statutory failures. Number 6 on the list, Phoenix, Arizona. The Valley of the Sun represents a massive institutional liquidation event. During the previous expansion cycle, institutional capital funds, private equity entities, and algorithmic buying networks acquired thousands of single-family residences across the Phoenix metro area. That institutional bid inflated values across the luxury tier. Today, those same institutional entities are executing systematic bulk liquidations to de-risk their corporate balance sheets. Data from the Maricopa County Assessor's Office confirms that institutional sellers have dumped over 4,000 premium residential assets back onto the open market in recent quarters. Consequently, market trackers from CoreLogic show that high-end residential valuations across Outer Ring Phoenix submarkets have dropped precipitously from their peak recorded highs. The mathematical models that drove algorithmic acquisition strategies failed to account for extreme municipal resource constraints. The primary environmental tipping point stems from the Arizona Department of Water Resources. The state issued strict regulatory limitations on new groundwater pumping, halting unsubdivided residential developments relying on unreplenished central Arizona aquifers. Zillow Market Analytics indicate that luxury properties dependent on private wells or unassured water supplies have experienced a 61% drop in buyer inquiries compared to parcels tied to municipal infrastructure. Simultaneously, local utility providers report an average 38% increase in summer cooling costs for properties exceeding 5,000 square feet, turning massive desert estates into high-maintenance liabilities. Number 5. Las Vegas, Nevada. The Las Vegas market reflects the extreme fragility of a gaming and entertainment-dependent economy when national discretionary spending contracts. According to figures from the local Realtors Association, median valuations for properties in the top 10% price bracket have dropped by 52% since benchmark interest rates rose. Speculative capital focused on high-end residential flipping has experienced complete margin compression. Data compiled by Atom Data Solutions shows that gross profit margins on luxury residential flips in the Las Vegas Valley collapsed by 75%, leaving dozens of partially renovated multi-million-dollar projects abandoned mid-construction. A softness in regional gaming revenues, published by the Nevada Gaming Control Board, serves as a leading indicator for broader corporate job losses across mid-level executive tiers. Furthermore, energy grid upgrade surcharges pushed residential electricity rates for large format estates up by 42% over a 12-month period, adding further carrying cost pressure to unsold inventory. Number 4. Miami, Florida. In South Florida, the luxury condominium sector is undergoing a massive financial, structural, and legal reckoning, triggered directly by state legislative mandates following the 2021 Surfside building collapse. Under Senate Bill 4D and House Bill 913, all condominium structures 30 years or older, or 25 years or older within 3 miles of the coastline must complete mandatory structural integrity reserve studies, SIRS, and 10-year recertifications. Crucially, state law permanently banned condo association boards from voting to waive or defer structural reserve contributions. Governing docs. The result is a wave of special assessments. Data from the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation reveals that 58% of coastal luxury condo owners are currently facing special assessments, ranging from $50,000 to over $200,000 per unit, to fund deferred concrete remediation, roof replacements, and structural waterproofing. Governing docs. Redfin Analytics show high-end condo active inventory exploding by 420%, driving transaction prices down by up to 55% in older waterfront zip codes. The structural crisis is compounded by an unviable insurance landscape. The Florida Office of Insurance Regulation reports average coastal property insurance premiums surging by 180% in 24 months. Zillow reports show that nearly 1/3 of luxury coastal listings in Miami are currently marketed by sellers who cannot secure standard windstorm or hurricane coverage, severely restricting traditional mortgage underwriting. Number 3. Los Angeles, California. The Los Angeles luxury housing sector is suffering from municipal tax policy shifts and declining safety metrics. The implementation of Measure ULA, commonly referred to as the mansion tax, imposed an additional 4% tax on real property transfers over $5 million and a 5.5% tax on transfers over $10 million. According to data from the local multiple listing service, transaction volume for properties priced above $5 million collapsed by 72% immediately following the law's enactment. Zillow Analytics highlight that luxury home valuations across premier hilltop enclaves have dropped 45% as high net worth sellers execute price cuts to avoid the tax threshold or simply relocate to zero income tax jurisdictions. At the same time, crime statistics released by the Los Angeles Police Department indicate a 29% surge in home invasion robberies targeting affluent residential zip codes, forcing homeowners to absorb significant private security overhead. Number 2. Naples, Florida. This ultra-wealthy Gulf Coast enclave is experiencing a severe price adjustment in its waterfront residential sector. The primary driver is the near-total withdrawal of major private insurance carriers from the coastal barrier island market. Following successive hurricane impacts, major admitted carriers declined to renew policies across multi-million-dollar properties. Policy premiums issued through state-backed residual markets have jumped by up to 240% in 36 months. Redfin data reveals a 380% surge in active listings across high-end coastal zones as property owners attempt to liquidate assets prior to subsequent storm seasons. Data from local property appraisers confirms that parcels situated below newly elevated FEMA-based flood elevations are taking up to 55% price discounts, while Zillow reports that 42% of pending luxury contracts in Naples failed to close due to buyers being denied standard property insurance at underwriting.